Hey there everyone. Have you ever thought about how companies use consumer reactions to a competitor to make strategic decisions about their own products? Well, whether you have or not, today we're going to talk about this potential research opportunity gap and how it can be modeled using game theory. Game theory. Game theory is the systematic study in which mathematical models are strategically applied to decision-making situations. Games typically involve multiple players and payoffs. Through game theoretic models, players can predict and select actions which are either the most desirable or have the least detrimental payoffs. Game theory has application in numerous fields, including board games, business operations, politics, military, engineering systems, and a whole bunch more. Games are classified by the categories which they fall into. Common opposing categories are competitive versus cooperative, simultaneous versus sequential, and fully informed players versus an asymmetric information distribution. A player's set of decision-making actions is known as their strategy. An action within a strategy is said to be strictly dominant if that action is the same or better than all other actions, regardless of an opponent's action. An equilibrium can be found under the assumption that all players select dominant actions. In a Nash equilibrium, a steady state has been reached if all players choose dominant actions and would not benefit from switching actions if opponents also do not. In modeling competing business firms, a perfect competition is a market in which every firm is able to select their best actions without affecting others. Unfortunately, it is almost impossible for this to happen in reality. On the other end of the spectrum is a monopoly, a market consisting of a single ruling firm. Most real-life scenarios fall under the model of an oligopoly, a market in which a handful of companies strategically compete to sell goods. For simplicity's sake in game theoretic analysis, oligopolies are modeled as a market with only two competing firms, known as a duopoly. There are four main types of duopolies that are often examined. The first is the Cournot duopoly, a simultaneous game where firms have identical cost functions and products and try to find optimum prices to maximize market share. The result of this model is the Cournot-Nash equilibrium, which determines the optimal price for both firms in this game. The second duopoly is the Stackelberg duopoly, a sequential game where one firm, the leader, decides on production quantity before the other, the follower. This model shows that the leader has higher production and lower prices, but this does not always guarantee that this will lead to more profit. The third duopoly is an alternative to Cournot's with a strategic focus on price selection rather than production quantity. This duopoly, known as Bertrand's duopoly, leads to a paradox which suggests that a scenario of imperfect competition containing a strong incentive for collusion, or firms competing, results in the same outcome as perfect competition. The final duopoly, Edgeworth's duopoly, attempts to solve Bertrand's paradox by constraining production capacity within the game and allowing for collusion. While this model is more realistic than Bertrand's, it is not a definitive game solution, as there are laws which outlaw forms of collusion, and collusion would lead to other firms in the market to follow suit. In business applications, out of these duopolies, the ones most employed are the Cournot and Stackelberg models. Because real-world business situations rarely contain complete necessary information, there is research which examines the effects that information has on business strategies. One such study modeled a duopoly in which one firm was given full information of the current state of the consumer demand curve while the other was uninformed. Each firm was allowed to choose to make a decision in either the first or second decision stage with no knowledge of the other selection. The results found that an equilibrium always exists in such a way that is beneficial for one firm to be Stackelberg leader, as in first mover, but no absolute way to predict who that leader will be. Over time, technological breakthroughs lead firms to move into new markets. A study analyzed how a business's information about profitability in a new market guides the decision to be a first mover. First movers may deter competition from entering the market, but at the cost of releasing critical information. Thus, firms must be cautious when releasing private information about profitability. This work concluded that the decision to move is dependent on how strong the company's private information is. If it is weak, being first mover will not benefit the opposition, possibly resulting in room in the market for both. If it is strong, holding out may reduce possible competition, but the company is also missing out on first mover profitability. In the case where both firms hold out, they are increasing the likelihood of later becoming direct competitors, and therefore in this regard, having information could actually be detrimental. A major influential type of information which can guide strategic decisions is consumer information. Information about a firm's target consumers can be acquired through quantitative methods such as analysis of sales numbers and reported product profits, or a qualitative method like consumer reviews and internet trend analysis. A study focusing on analyzing a group of other studies on the combination of social media with commercial activities noted that a large majority of studies relied on surveys as a method for information extraction, as they allow for the highest quantity of data collection. The researchers also noticed that many studies performed on social commerce was aimed at gathering information post-purchase, suggesting that social networking sites can be helpful in branding to future consumers. Another way businesses utilize consumer information is through consumer co-creation, a process in which the consumers are directly involved in helping design a product. One study analyzed co-creation from a variety of aspects. Positives of the method were found to be cost reduction for design development, increased product effectiveness, and a strong customer-firm relationship. Negatives pointed out were the difficulty in implementing multiple customer inputs, increased organizational complexity, and loss of private information. Another study explored direct co-creation as seen in video game industry through modding, where a firm allows a portion of proprietary content to be utilized by consumers to build their own creations. Analysts look at popular mods to decide what to include in later games. Developers need to be cautious, though, to ensure that modifications complement and not replace the original product. This idea expands to any situation where a consumer is helping design a product, as the consumer's design may become a direct competitor with the intended new product. As new technologies emerge in the world, companies must decide whether or not to adopt them to stay competitive. A study which applied a sophisticated model of the core node duopoly to firms found that the wider the technology gap between firms, the higher the profitability of both firms, as they are less likely to compete in the same market. Another study developed a duopolistic technology model focusing on cost and uncertainty. The first mover to adopt a technology has to deal with high cost and uncertainty, whereas the second mover has the advantage of learning from the first to reduce these aspects. It was concluded that, on average, it is more beneficial to be a second mover in regards to technology adoption. The level of information on a new technology's effectiveness also plays a key role. A study using a two-stage model to analyze the effect of asymmetric information on technology adoption decisions suggested that this information distribution leads to sequential adoption patterns, and that uncertainty as to competitors' information levels may lead to more aggressive technology adoption. In certain cases, it was found that having better information could lead a firm to a worse strategic decision. There was also a study which looked at how the type of technology affects adoption. The developed model analyzed association between technology type and the rate at which it is adopted into the firm's system. The equilibria theorized that it is most effective for companies to adopt cost-reducing technologies sequentially, with a leader firm and a follower firm. Strategic technologies, which improve manufacturing capabilities or potential R&D prospects, could be adopted either simultaneously or sequentially, although the rate of sequential adoption is significantly higher than that of the cost-reducing technologies. So where does all of this research lead to? Well, it seems that there could be a great advantage for a business to analyze how consumers react to its competitors releasing information about their upcoming technologies, and then taking these responses into account in the design of their own product. For example, if Apple presents features for the upcoming iPhone, then Samsung can acknowledge consumer response to it by possibly changing the design of the new Galaxy which is currently in development. The research gap here could be in establishing a game theoretical model which utilizes consumer reaction in some form as information within a sequential game. Most literature views technology adoption as a game in which two firms are incorporating new outside technology to improve systems or products, but this research would model the game in a way where the leading company has already displayed their own new technology and the other company must translate consumer data into usable information to predict the best competitive strategy. Thanks to everybody for sweating this video out until the end. I hope that you found this video informative and will maybe even see your own research gaps that can be filled through the application of game theory.